At exactly 2:41 a.m., I woke up because the smoke alarm in the kitchen beeped once. Not because there was a fire, but because I never replaced the battery. That single beep ruined my entire life. Why? Because I looked at my phone. And there it was. A text from her. Just married my coworker. Clinking glasses also. You're pathetic BTW. LOL. That's it. No explanation. No apology. No context. Just that. Followed, a minute later, by, do we still have that purple shampoo I like? I might swing by later if you are not weird about it. No punctuation. No heart emoji. Just that same tone she always used when she needed me to refill her gas tank or unclog her curling iron. I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the wall for a bit, trying to remember if this was a dream. It had to be, right? Who does this? Who goes to Las Vegas for a leadership retreat and ends up marrying Nick from payroll? Yeah, Nick. The guy who brings lunch in a cooler and still uses a flip phone. I remember him from her holiday party. He wore a turtleneck with wolves on it. I did what any emotionally constipated man would do at 2:43 in the morning. I got out of bed, went downstairs, made cold pasta, and opened our joint banking app. The first thing I noticed? She tried to withdraw $600 from an ATM inside a casino. Twice. Both declined. Then she used Apple Pay at a gift shop called Spicy Boutique. I don't even want to know. I blocked her cards. Every one of them. Then I changed the locks. And just to be petty, I also changed the Wi-Fi password to I dumped you first 123. By 4 a.m., I had packed her stuff into trash bags and stacked them neatly on the porch, next to the dying hydrangeas she never watered. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't even take a screenshot of the text, though I should have. I went back upstairs, crawled into bed, and fell asleep to a YouTube video about raccoons stealing dog food. At 7:11 a.m., I was woken up by a knock. Not the casual kind. The firm, uniformed, cop knock kind. I opened the door in my bathrobe. Two officers stood on my lawn, one holding a clipboard, the other glancing at the porch like it had a body on it. Sir, we received a report of identity theft and domestic intimidation. Mind if we come in? Identity theft? Domestic intimidation? I hadn't even had my coffee yet. And that was before they told me why they were really there. They didn't even look like real cops at first. I don't know what I expected, maybe grizzled faces and mirrored shades. But instead I got two guys who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. The one holding the clipboard asked if I was Harlan Grady. I nodded, tightening my bathrobe like that would somehow shield me from whatever ridiculous drama I was about to be dragged into. We've received a report involving financial coercion and unlawful property exclusion, he said, like he was reading off a cereal box. We'd like to ask you a few questions, if that's all right. My first instinct was to laugh. Not a full laugh, just that sharp, bitter kind of snort you make when the absurdity of life becomes so overwhelming that all you can do is emit air. I stepped aside and let them in, mostly because I was too tired to argue and partly because I wanted them to see the trash bags by the door. Those are her things, I said, pointing like a man explaining a crime scene. She texted me last night. Said she married someone else. From Vegas. I blocked her cards and changed the locks. That's not financial coercion. That's common sense. The older officer looked at his partner, who shifted uncomfortably. Clipboard guy took a deep breath and said, she claims you froze her assets during a marital dispute and denied her access to shared property without legal cause. She married another man in a different state. I shot back, and then asked me to save her shampoo. Is that a marital dispute or the opening act of a Lifetime movie? He didn't laugh. None of them did. I guess dry sarcasm doesn't translate well when you're wearing a badge. They asked me to explain the timeline. I told them everything. The work trip, the text, the bank activity, the Wi-Fi password, which they didn't find as funny as I did. When I got to the part about the $600 ATM withdrawal, the younger cop, who hadn't said a word yet, finally spoke. She tried to withdraw that money from a joint account, sir. Legally, she still has access to it unless there's a court order. You can't just freeze her out. I blinked. She's in another state, married to someone else. Why is this my problem? And then came the kicker. She's not legally married, clipboard cop said. There's no record of a marriage license. She filed a police report this morning claiming you committed fraud. She says you forged a signature to block her access to your finances, and she believes you're attempting to retaliate against her for seeking a separation. I stood there stunned. My ex-wife, or so I thought, had apparently returned to our city in less than 12 hours, hadn't texted or called again, and had enough time to invent an entirely different version of reality before my toaster even popped. She's back? I asked, voice dry. She's here. She arrived early this morning, the officer confirmed. Told us she felt unsafe returning home. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. But all I could manage was walking over to the sink, filling a glass with water, and drinking it like I'd just crossed the desert. She felt unsafe? I said finally. She felt unsafe because I didn't let her waltz back into my house after marrying her coworker in a hotel chapel next to an oxygen bar? The officers didn't respond. They said they weren't pressing charges, not yet, but they advised I get legal counsel and avoid any unilateral decisions regarding shared assets. As they were leaving, one of them looked at the bags by the door and said, "Might want to keep that stuff inside for now. She has a right to her belongings." After they left, I stood there in the hallway for a long time. The light from the window stretched across the carpet, hitting the edge of the suitcase she used for every business trip. Still zipped, still clean. I hadn't even looked inside. That was my mistake. Because when I opened it, I found something that made me sit down on the floor like someone had unplugged my legs. Not clothes, not makeup, but a sealed envelope, with my name on it. And inside, a prenup I didn't know I'd signed, and a notarized document transferring the deed of our house to her. I must have read that document 10 times before I finally accepted it wasn't some kind of prank. I could barely even process the words. My name, full legal name, was signed at the bottom in a handwriting that looked disturbingly like mine. But the problem was, I didn't remember ever holding a pen. The prenup was dated almost 2 years ago, notarized in Denver, and carefully typed on letterhead I didn't recognize. It stated, in painfully clear legal language, that in the event of a mutual separation or spousal abandonment, the house would be transferred solely to her. The signature line was perfect. It even included my middle name, something I never write. Not even on tax forms. I didn't sign this. I know I didn't. But the notary's stamp was legitimate. The envelope was sealed, and everything about it reeked of preparation, of planning. This wasn't a drunken text from Vegas anymore. This was a long con, and I had no idea how long she'd been playing me. I sat there, on the living room floor, the stupid hum of the fridge in the background, wondering how much of my life had been scripted without me knowing. Had she been building this whole thing like a chessboard, waiting for the right moment to move all her pieces? And what the hell did she tell the notary? That I was shy around strangers and didn't like being present? I called my bank, again, and asked if there had been any further attempts to access the account. They said yes. Someone had tried logging in from a new device just 20 minutes earlier. I locked it all down, changed every password, added two-factor verification, then sat back and watched my life crumble in slow motion. I wanted to text her. I even typed out a dozen messages, each one angrier than the last. But I deleted them all. She wasn't going to get a reaction from me. Not the one she wanted. Instead, I called the title office. I don't know what I expected to hear. Maybe that it was a scam, or a mistake, or that the paperwork had never been finalized. But no, it was real. The title had been officially updated 3 weeks ago. That's right. She had transferred the property quietly, behind my back, before she ever stepped foot on that Vegas-bound plane. And if that wasn't bad enough, the woman on the phone kindly informed me that a private buyer had submitted an inquiry about the property just 2 days ago. Someone was trying to buy my house, and they were doing it with her permission. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch in the clothes I'd been wearing since the cops left. Every time a car passed by outside, my chest tightened, wondering if it was her pulling up to grab her shampoo, or if it was a locksmith, a realtor, or something worse. At 3:06 a.m., my phone buzzed again. It was an email. No subject, just an attachment. A video file. I hesitated before opening it. The sender's name was blocked, anonymized through some kind of burner email. But curiosity wins. It always does. The video was grainy, handheld. Looked like it was shot in a hotel room. There was laughing, her laugh, and the unmistakable voice of Nick, the guy she supposedly married. Except they weren't dressed for a wedding. She was wearing a hoodie. He was shirtless. They were lying in bed, laughing about me. And then she said it. I bet he's packing my stuff right now. Like a good little butler. I swear, he'll cry when he sees the prenup. Watch. Nick chuckled. You really think he'll believe you got married? Please, she said, sipping from a plastic cup. Harlan believes anything. That's his thing. He trusts people. That's why he's perfect for this. The video ended there. I just sat in the dark, watching the replay, mouth dry, heart pounding like it wanted out of my chest. It wasn't about love. It wasn't even about cheating. It was a setup. And somehow, I was still playing along. By sunrise, I'd watched the video 5 times. Not because I needed to, I could have recited every word of it in my sleep by then, but because I couldn't stop. There was something about the way she laughed. That mean little laugh. The one I used to mistake for confidence. The one I used to call charming. Now it sounded like venom. I saw it for what it really was. It's hard to describe what it feels like when you realize your entire marriage was just a performance, and you weren't even the audience. You were just the prop, the willing idiot in the background. The phone rang around 8:12 a.m. I didn't recognize the number, but something in my gut said not to answer. I let it ring, watched it stop, and then immediately buzz with a voicemail notification. I didn't listen to it. I just sat at the kitchen table, staring at the blinking red light on the coffee maker that had been flashing since yesterday. Then I heard it, tires crunching gravel. I stood up, walked over to the window, and looked out. There was a man in my driveway. Mid-40s, khakis, tin sport coat, holding a clipboard. No uniform, no tool belt. Just that awful smug energy of someone who knew something I didn't. I opened the door, didn't even step outside, just leaned against the frame and waited for him to speak first. He smiled like a politician at a parade. "Mr. Grady?" he asked, flipping through his folder without looking up. "I'm here on behalf of Summit Pines Realty. We've been granted access for a preliminary evaluation on the property prior to listing." I didn't respond. I blinked. Slowly, as if he were speaking another language. He glanced up, noticed the look on my face, and tried again. "Your wife scheduled this 2 days ago. The intent is to place the property on the market by Friday. I'm just here to take measurements and photographs. Shouldn't take more than an hour." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me so he couldn't see the mess inside. The bags, the open documents, the half-drunk coffee that had gone cold hours ago. "This house isn't for sale," I said. Calm. Cold. Flat. The man hesitated. "According to the deed, Ms. Blythe Grady is the sole owner. She has legal authority to initiate the listing process. You're still living here?" I didn't respond. My jaw clenched. He took a small step back, likely sensing he'd poked the wrong bear. "I'll confirm with the office," he mumbled, then turned and left without taking a single measurement. I stood there in my driveway long after he pulled away, the morning sun making everything feel even more surreal. How had this spiraled so fast? 48 hours ago, I was rubbing garlic butter on frozen rolls, planning to surprise her with a homemade dinner when she got back. And now, I was standing barefoot in the driveway of a house I no longer owned, watching strangers circle it like vultures. I knew I couldn't sit back anymore. I called a lawyer. Not a big-name guy. I couldn't afford that, but a local friend of a friend named Merrick Barnes. His office smelled like old coffee and printer ink. When I explained everything, he didn't even flinch, just scratched something in a yellow notebook and said, "You're not the first guy to get blindsided. But she's good. This is premeditated. And if that signature holds up, we're going to have to get creative." He asked me if I had proof that the prenup was forged. I said no. He asked if I had video evidence of her admitting to manipulation. I pulled out my phone and showed him the clip. He watched it once, no expression. Then again. When it ended, he finally spoke. "She's smart," he said. "Dumb in some ways, but smart in the ways that hurt." I asked him what I should do next. He leaned forward. "Start acting like a man who's under siege. Because you are. Document everything. Print bank statements. Change your passwords, all of them. And most importantly, don't engage her directly. If she calls, let it go to voicemail. If she shows up, don't open the door. Let me handle it. She's not trying to win. She's trying to bait you into losing." That advice would have been easy to follow, if not for what happened later that night. Around 10:30 p.m., I was back home, dead quiet in the living room, sitting under a single lamp like some noir character from an old movie. I heard a sound from the back door, a shuffle. I froze. Listened again. Then I heard the key turn. My stomach dropped. She was trying to get in, even after I'd changed the locks. But she wasn't alone. There were 2 shadows outside the door, and one of them said, "Be quick. He's probably asleep." I didn't move. Not at first. My body locked into place like my brain was trying to buy time it didn't have. Two voices. One male, one female. One obviously hers. The other? I couldn't tell. It wasn't Nick's voice from the video. It was deeper, slower, like someone trying not to be recognized. The deadbolt didn't turn. Thank God. But I heard them fiddle with the knob, then the unmistakable sound of a key sliding in. They had won. Somehow, after everything, they still had a key. Probably one I didn't know existed, one she'd made without ever asking, tucked away in some drawer for a moment just like this. A moment where I was supposed to be asleep, and she could slip in like nothing had happened. But she had forgotten one thing. When the cops showed up 2 mornings ago, I did more than just change the locks. I installed a camera. Nothing fancy, just a small indoor motion-activated cam I stuck up near the kitchen, pointing toward the back entry. It was synced to my phone. I wanted to believe I'd never need it. But something told me this wasn't over. That she wasn't done with me. I ducked low, careful not to make the old floorboards creak beneath me, and slipped behind the couch just as the door opened. The sensor light flicked on in the kitchen. Footsteps. 2 sets. Soft, hesitant. Her voice came first, too casual, like this wasn't her 3rd betrayal in less than a week. "It's just the kitchen," she whispered. "He won't hear anything if we're quick." The man with her didn't respond. He moved silently, heavy boots on linoleum. Then I heard the sound of drawers opening, utensils clinking, papers rustling. She wasn't here for shampoo. She was here for something specific, something that mattered more than dignity. A moment later, she whispered again. "Check the desk drawer in the hallway. He always kept stuff in there." That was all I needed to hear. I reached for my phone, hands shaking, and hit the camera's live view. The screen lit up instantly. There she was, standing in the kitchen in a dark jacket, ponytail pulled back, scanning through a pile of old mail like she was sorting coupons. Behind her, a man in a black hoodie and a beanie moved through the hallway with the patience of someone who wasn't afraid to be there. Then I hit record. I wanted to yell, confront them. But Merrick's words echoed in my head. "She's trying to bait you into losing." If I lost it, if I touched her, raised my voice, did anything beyond breathing, she'd spin it. I'd be the unstable one, the jealous husband who couldn't let go. So I stayed hidden, watched them rifle through my life like it was some clearance bin. And then something strange happened. The man, whoever he was, stepped out of frame and into the hallway, but his voice carried. "You sure it's in here?" She scoffed. "It was in the drawer when I moved in. He doesn't throw anything out. If we don't find it, we're screwed." I already told them the paperwork was in hand. My heart stuttered. What paperwork? I wanted to scream, to leap over the couch and demand answers. But I did something better. I let the camera keep rolling. The man came back with a folder, my old taxes, from years ago. He handed it to her. She flipped through it like she was looking for a lottery ticket, then shook her head in frustration. "Wrong year," she hissed. "We need 2021. That's when the name change was filed." The name change? That made no sense. She never changed her name legally after our wedding. She refused. Said it was archaic. So what the hell was she talking about? Then she turned, fast, looking straight toward the window, and froze. My heart dropped. Had she seen me? No. She was staring at the blinking red light on the wall, the one I hadn't noticed when I installed the camera. The tiny light that signaled recording. I watched, helpless, as her eyes narrowed, then widened. She whispered something sharp under her breath, too fast to catch, and bolted toward the door. They were gone in seconds. I stood up, shaking, not from fear, from the weight of 1,000 questions crashing down on me. What paperwork had she promised someone? What name change was she referring to? And who was that man? Most importantly, who had she told she was still me? Sleep wasn't an option. After they left, I locked every door, double-checked every window, and sat at the kitchen table staring at the camera footage like it was some kind of horror film starring me as the oblivious victim. It didn't even feel real. The way she moved through my house. No, our house, with that quiet authority. Like she still belonged here. Like I was the one trespassing. The man with her had never spoken loud enough or long enough for me to place his voice. I replayed the audio again and again, trying to make sense of his face, his build, his body language. Nothing clicked. But that phrase, the one she whispered, that's when the name change was filed. It spun around in my head like a drill, carving out a pit in my stomach. I opened my laptop and did what every panicked person does at 2 a.m. I Googled things I didn't even know how to phrase. Name change, legal identity theft, spouse? Can someone change name for fraud, marriage? How to check if your identity was stolen by your own wife. The answers were worse than I expected. Not just legally complicated, possible. Especially if there was a paper trail, especially if she'd been planting the seeds for months, or even years. By 6 a.m., I was already outside the county records office, waiting in the car with a bag of cold fast food breakfast I couldn't bring myself to eat. I went inside the moment they unlocked the doors. The woman at the desk gave me that same look you get at the DMV, dead behind the eyes, ready for the next mess. I told her I wanted to check for any name change filings connected to my name or social security number. She asked if I had a court case number. I didn't. I asked if she could search by date range. She could, if I paid a $28 fee and filled out a form. I scribbled as fast as I could. She disappeared into the back room, and when she returned 15 minutes later, her face looked different, like she knew something I didn't. There is a record, she said, filed under your name 3 months ago, but it's unusual. She turned the monitor toward me. I leaned in. The document listed my full legal name as the applicant, but not as the person requesting the change. No, that field had a different name. Blythe Elaine Morton. Her maiden name. She'd filed a name change using my information, but not to change her name to mine, or mine to hers. She was filing as me, requesting documents as Harlan Grady. Her signature was on the line marked applicant. Mine was nowhere. It hit me like a truck full of bricks. She wasn't just sabotaging our marriage or trying to sell the house. She was replacing me on paper. Slowly, carefully, removing me from my own legal existence and inserting herself wherever she could. Like identity erosion by 1,000 cuts. I demanded a copy of the file. They couldn't give it to me without a court order. I asked if anyone else had requested a copy. She checked. One person had. 2 weeks ago. A notary public. I left that office feeling like the ground beneath me wasn't concrete anymore. Like I was standing on a frozen lake and hearing the first cracks. I drove straight to Merrick's office. He was barely awake, sipping from a chipped mug when I barged in with a voice that didn't sound like mine. He read the court record, blinked once, then leaned back in his chair and said, "This isn't just divorce. This is a setup for identity laundering. She's trying to tie your name to something or someone she doesn't want traced to her." I stared at him, my brain still trying to compute. Like what? "I don't know yet," he said, "but it's big. It's not just about revenge. She's moving assets, possibly debts. Could be money laundering. Could be hiding something even darker." The phrase felt cartoonishly dramatic, until he opened his laptop, pulled up the property records, and scrolled through a list of ownership transfers tied to the same notary used for our so-called prenup. 6 different properties, all in the last 8 months. "She's done this before," he muttered. "Maybe not to a husband, but definitely to someone." I swallowed hard. Then Merrick looked me dead in the eyes and said something that made my blood go cold. "Harlan, has she ever used your name to open anything? A credit line, an insurance policy, a trust?" I started to shake my head, then stopped. 1 year ago, I got a call from a bank I didn't recognize. Said they were verifying my business account registration. I thought it was spam and hung up. Now I wasn't so sure. We weren't dealing with betrayal anymore. Betrayal is intimate, personal, emotional. This was procedural, mechanical, like a machine had been carefully programmed to disassemble my life, line by line, until there was nothing left to trace but a paper ghost. And that machine wore my wife's face. Merrick didn't waste time. The second I mentioned that old call from the mystery bank, he was already dialing contacts, accessing databases, pulling strings I didn't know lawyers could reach. He told me to sit tight, to not touch anything, to not log into anything. And for God's sake, not to confront her. "She's baiting you into being unstable," he said again, more sternly this time. "If she makes you look like a threat, this all turns against you. Court, cops, credit, all of it." He left me alone in his office for 15 minutes while he made calls. That's when I really started to spiral. What if this wasn't just about the house? What if the marriage had always been about access? Access to my identity, to the soft parts of my life, to the passwords and accounts I never thought to protect because, well, why would I protect them from her? Back home, I did something reckless. I opened the drawer where I kept old mail, utility bills, car registration, medical paperwork. I started sorting through it like an archaeologist dusting off a ruin. And sure enough, I found it. A letter from Cressidian Mutual Insurance addressed to Harlan Grady, sole proprietor. I'd never heard of that company. The return address was a P.O. box. The letter congratulated me on my executive tier life insurance policy, confirmed that I'd opted into a high-value payout plan for a business I didn't own, and welcomed me to their wealth legacy division. Dated 7 months ago. I called them. 27 minutes on hold. 3 transfers. And finally, a woman with a voice like a worn-out GPS answered. Yes, Mr. Grady, you're listed as the sole policyholder and beneficiary for the Grady Family Logistics Trust, registered in Colorado under tax ID, ending in 9927. How can I assist you today? I didn't speak for several seconds. What is the payout value of the policy? I asked, dreading the answer. Standard disbursement is $1,500,000, she replied cheerfully. Accidental death clause doubles that amount. Do you need a beneficiary change form? My blood froze. It wasn't just some dummy company or tax dodge. There was a life insurance policy out there tied to a fake business registered in my name, and I wasn't the beneficiary. I was the asset. I asked who was listed as the emergency contact. She gave a name. Elaine Morton, Blythe's maiden name. There it was. The full picture, so sharp it cut straight through me. She hadn't just stolen from me. She had built an alternate version of me, piece by piece. A shadow life that looked just enough like mine to fool a stranger, or a notary, or a policy manager reading from a script. She used my social security number, probably stole tax info from old emails, maybe even forged my signature more than once. And now she'd tied my death to her financial future. It was one thing to be cheated on. It was another thing to be replaced. But this was pre-murder paperwork. I called Merrick immediately, my voice barely recognizable to myself. She took out a life insurance policy on me under a fake company. I'm not even on it as a contact. She used her maiden name. She made herself my shadow, Merrick. She's living 2 lives, and one of them ends with me dead. He didn't respond right away, just breathing on the other end. Then finally, you're leaving the house tonight. I'm not letting her take it. She already has. This isn't about furniture anymore. Harlan, listen to me. If she went through all of this trouble, you need to consider the possibility that this doesn't end with paperwork. A pause. Then, quietly, she might want your body to vanish too. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because just then, I saw it. Out the window. Parked across the street. A silver SUV with its lights off. Engine running. It had been there for 3 nights in a row. I thought it was a neighbor. Now, I wasn't sure anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even lie down. I stayed in the dark, sitting by the front window, watching that silver SUV idle across the street like it was waiting for instructions. I didn't know who was in it. Maybe a PI, maybe a hired nobody, maybe just some clueless Uber driver. But I wasn't taking chances anymore. By morning, I was at Merrick's office with everything. The insurance letter, a printed copy of the video footage, a signed affidavit from my neighbor, saying she saw someone matching Blythe's description trying to open the back door with a key. I even brought the tampered prenup and Merrick's records on the fake notary connections. It was all too much for coincidence. And now, finally, it was enough. Merrick made 3 calls that changed everything. First, he contacted a friend in the DA's office who specialized in financial crimes and identity fraud. Second, he reached out to Cressidian Mutual's internal fraud team and submitted a formal investigation request. And third, the most important, he filed a protective injunction in family court. It included a cease and desist on all property transfers, account activity, and legal claims tied to my name. By that afternoon, a court clerk had signed off. We weren't playing defense anymore. Blythe had just been legally frozen. She showed up at the house around 6 p.m. like nothing had happened. She wore a peach sweater, had a takeout bag in her hand, Thai food from my favorite place, and knocked like this was just a random Tuesday. When I didn't answer, she let herself in using the side door. Except she walked into silence. No lights. No argument. Just me, sitting in the living room with Merrick beside me and a sheriff's deputy standing by the window. Blythe's face dropped the moment she saw the uniform. She didn't even try to act surprised. That was the most insulting part. Like she didn't believe I had it in me to fight back. You're trespassing, Merrick said. Calm. Clean. Final. This house is under legal review. You are to vacate immediately. She looked at me, and for the first time in the 4 years I'd known her, she didn't look confident. She looked small. This is ridiculous, she said. You're actually going to let some bottom-shelf lawyer. He's a bottom-shelf lawyer with a top-shelf folder, I said, standing up and holding out the evidence. All of it. You planned this like a heist, but you left fingerprints everywhere. She took a step back. The officer escorted her out without a word. She didn't scream. She didn't threaten. She just turned once at the edge of the porch and said, "You'll never prove it was me." I smiled. I don't have to. I already did. It took 4 months for the full investigation to conclude. Blythe was charged with insurance fraud, falsification of public records, attempted property theft, and unlawful impersonation. The notary she used? A friend from her gym, who turned state's evidence in exchange for a deal. Nick, her fake Vegas husband, turned out to be real, but she'd conned him too. Used a fake name. Said I was her controlling ex, and the house was hers by divorce. The guy was just a pawn. Another idiot like me. Only this time, I wasn't the one left holding the bag. The court restored my ownership of the house. The prenup was voided. All accounts were audited and frozen during review, then returned to me, clean. The fake trust was dissolved. The insurance policy was canceled. And her sentence? 18 months probation, community service, mandatory restitution. No jail time, but that didn't matter. Because she lost everything she came for. And me? I started over. Quietly. I repainted the house. Got a dog. Started working fewer hours. I even started going to therapy, not just because of her, but because somewhere along the way, I forgot how to say no. How to stop apologizing for being the quiet one. The one who rubs feet. The one who assumes love is supposed to feel like effort. Now it feels different. Now it feels like mine.